What's up, everybody? It's Jeremy Minnick with the Game Changing Roofer Podcast, a show created to share the stories of roofers who are changing the game in the roofing industry. This show is meant to help roofers build better businesses and better lives. My guest today started his journey as an independent insurance adjuster for more than 6 years. More recently, though, he pivoted in the insurance space to help contractors instead of the insurance company. His company, ClaimStar, empowers contractors to negotiate a fair final price for insurance claim jobs through clear and accurate Xactimate estimates that reflect the real costs of roof and siding replacement. He's here today to share insights into how an expert knowledge of estimating and supplementing can help you make more profit per job, produce accurate, well-documented estimates, and stay focused on selling. Joining us on the show is Peter Gaetano from ClaimStar. Welcome to the show, Peter.
Hey, Jeremy. Thanks for having me on.
I'm excited to have you here today. I think you've got a ton of insight and knowledge to share with contractors, with roofers, on how to really do estimating right. And so right before we kind of dive into that, we'd love to hear a little bit of the background and your story. So how did you get into this whole insurance thing, this whole contracting space in general?
Yeah. I feel like I kind of stumbled into this. Originally, I actually worked out after high school. I didn't go straight to college. I actually went out and worked in the oil fields in North Dakota. So I did that for about a year. And then I did end up going to college at Christendom College. I just did a year there. And I really didn't know what I was going to do afterwards. I loved Christendom, but I just felt like college wasn't really my cup of tea. So got a call from my brother-in-law, and he worked at this company that actually trained and licensed independent adjusters. So he gave me a call. He said, "Hey, do you want to come take this course? We're going down to Dallas." He was going to go ahead and take the course himself. So I really didn't have any plans. So I was like, "Why not? I'll go to Dallas." So I didn't know anything about adjusting, thing about roofing or anything. And so I went down there. It was actually this, pretty intense, rigorous 7-week long course in classroom, in person. We did, mock inspections, climbed roofs. So got licensed down there and just got into the business from there. My first assignment was actually an inside desk adjuster position. So did that for 6 or 7 months. And then from there, just took deployments after deployment, kind of went around the country and got into adjusting from there.
That's awesome. It's crazy to hear, how, like, I love those stories about how people get into this kind of stuff, because sometimes there's a total backstory of, yeah, I'm like a, third generation roofer, or I've been doing this my whole life. Like from the moment I was like literally like born, like, there I was.
Right.
And on the flip side, there's the stories of, look, I just kind of stumbled into it, or I saw an opportunity and I took it, and bam, here you are. And so it's like, basically the point is, success can come through many different ways, whether you were sort of born into it or whether you sort of find this industry gold rush through another avenue, maybe even just stumbling into it. So it's great to hear that story. What about the time after that kind of desk job that you began deployments? Were you working for a company, or were you an independent adjuster?
Yeah, so I was an independent adjuster. So I worked for, a bunch of different companies throughout the years, traveled around the country. So I just kind of got my name out there, applied to a whole bunch of firms. For people who don't know how independents normally get their work, it's usually through these firms that they're the ones who kind of directly receive assignments from insurance companies, and then they turn around and find independents to assign those to. So I worked for a number of different firms, and I started doing a lot of hurricane work, started traveling to Florida and Texas, but all over, up in the Northeast, New York, Massachusetts, and areas up there. So kind of been all over, and seen kind of a handful of different types of storms.
That's awesome. Have you enjoyed the traveling, like, kind of as you've gone through, or is it fun, or is that an exhausting part of being an insurance adjuster?
It's always exciting for me in the beginning, and then you get there and it's a lot of work. So one thing is, like, while you're doing the work, you might be in some cool place, but you have almost zero time to see anything, or
Right.
I was down in Florida for, I think, for a whole month before I went to the beach once, and I was about 2 miles from the beach. just because you're overwhelmed with work. You're just working from sun up to sundown. So usually what I would do if I liked the area, after I was done the deployment, I'd hang around for a week or two afterwards and get to see the spot. So yeah, I really enjoyed it. It was, yeah, you'll end up in the weirdest places, like, way south in Texas, just ranchers, just areas you never see unless you,
Right.
are in this.
What would you say out of all the areas you've gone to, if you could go back, where would you go back in vacation?
Oh, I've already been back twice. There's Naples, Florida. That was the dream. That was the dream deployment. I was set up. I actually got a place right on the beach for the well, it was on a river that went out into the Gulf, but right on the water for the deployment. So that was actually one that was really nice, and I've actually been back to that house afterwards. So
That's
without a doubt,
awesome.
Naples.
Yeah, it's gorgeous down there. It's like just insane when you're walking down. I think it's Fifth Ave. There's also another one that's really nice street within Naples downtown area. But it's crazy when you're walking down the street and every like third car you pass is a Bentley.
Yeah.
You're in
Yeah, it's definitely. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, it's definitely a nice area. Yeah, we actually lucked out with the rental there because the house that we were supposed to stay in got damaged. We couldn't stay there because of the hurricane. So they called us and were like, hey, so sorry about this. We're going to switch houses on you. And I was like, okay, that's fine. I show up at the new one. It's right on the water. It's like 3 times bigger than the old one. I was like, this works out.
That's awesome. Well, sweet. So in the insurance industry, you were there for about maybe about 5.5, a little over, I don't know, somewhere around 6 years, right? That you're working as an independent insurance adjuster. No doubt that gave you a ton of insight from that perspective, a ton of experience from that perspective. What led you eventually into starting ClaimStar and into getting into more of the supplementing and estimating side of for the contractor?
Yeah. So I'd always been kind of thinking, my mind's always thinking about, how can I go further? How can I expand my game? And so my brother-in-law and I actually started an adjusting training course first. So we actually started that, and we would do this live webinar for adjusters, and we'd kind of walk them through what to expect, how to get into the business. So that was our first kind of side hustle we had going. And then about a year ago, a roofing friend of mine actually reached out to me and said, he was looking for Xactimate training. And he was asking if I could give him some help with that. And my first thought was like, oh yeah, sure. Yeah, of course I'll help you out, get some training. But then I get off the call and immediately my wheels started turning. I'm like, does it really, the first thing occurred to me, does it make sense for an entire roofing company to train every single person in the company, all the sales reps, to learn Xactimate, to learn how to write in Xactimate, which is a huge system. It's pretty complicated. I'm still learning things in Xactimate. I've been using it for 6 years. So it's a pretty complex system. Once you kind of understand it, you can do some stuff in it. But I just started thinking, that's probably not the most efficient process for a company to have every sales rep writing up their own claims. They're all going to look differently. Are they really going to be maximizing? Are we really going to maximize the claim and the supplement with grabbing a sales guy that's maybe had 4 or 5 months experience, in the industry? So instead of training him, I approached the company owner and offered to do it for the company. And so that's really how it got started. So I started doing it for a company here. And then from there, I've reached out to other companies, and that's sort of how ClaimStar got started.
That's awesome. And it makes good sense. And that's what we're going to kind of dive into, I think, a ton more, is basically the value, first of all, of understanding how to estimate and supplement well, just as is. And 2, a little bit about the value of potentially outsourcing it or finding the right person who can do that for you, who can supplement and estimate well, obviously be hyper-focused and specialized in providing that valuably. So let's kind of pivot. I'm really excited to dive into some of the insights that you have to share, again, about estimating and supplementing. So first of all, you kind of mentioned to me, we were talking about this before the call, that again, with your experience as an insurance adjuster, you have like a different perspective, a different lens that you approach estimating and supplementing. How has that helped you, and how does it help the people, obviously your clients or those that you help, contractors themselves, to deliver better estimates?
Yeah, so it's a great question. From the adjusting angle, from the adjusting side of things, basically, whether you're an independent or you're an employed staff adjuster, you have these strict guidelines from the insurance company that you have to follow. So you have to write up your estimates this way. You can only approve this if this is going on. So they have a strict, and sometimes these things are, just like theses long, thick estimating guidelines. So you really have to present, from the contractor standpoint, you really have to present your estimate, your supplement, and hit on the right things to get that approved. And it all comes down to documentation. So they will pay out money if they see a claim. Okay, so this is a covered claim. We owe to replace this roof. They'll pay to replace that roof. But now they're only going to pay for what they feel they owe. So you have to show them why they owe more. If you think they're not covering something, if they haven't included a line item or whatever the case may be, you have to show them. And if you don't show them, they're not going to include it. It's that simple. So it all comes down to documentation, which starts from the initial inspection process, looking for every item on the roof, making sure nothing's getting left off, just all the photos you're taking there, how many layers of shingles are on that roof. So it really comes down to documentation and understanding. Even though you're a contractor, you're not a public adjuster, you're not the claimant, so you can't really address policy. It's good to understand that the adjuster is, and kind of understand some of that so that you can present a good case for the homeowner.
Right. And piggybacking right off that, I think one of the things that really jumped out at me is that you mentioned right before, again, we hopped on, that a lot of roof sales consultants and a lot of roofing sales guys don't understand the story. And I love that word. They don't understand the story that an insurance adjuster needs to tell the insurance company. What did you mean by that? And can you kind of unpack that?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So basically when an adjuster goes out, he has some initial facts that he's going off of. So the homeowner or the claimant has filed a claim. So they've given the insurance company some very basic information. They're saying, hail damaged my roof. A hailstorm happened and I've sustained damage from that hail claim, from that hailstorm. So that's really what you're going off of. So your job is to go out there and, one, is that what occurred? Does that make sense? Is there, did hail damage this roof? So in order to answer yes to that question, so we can go ahead and approve this roof, the hail has to make sense. So you're presenting in a story, because you're turning around, you're going out there collecting all the facts, and then you're turning around and submitting that to your manager, who's going to review that. It's got to make sense. So if you're saying hail damaged your roof, it better have damaged some other stuff, Hail doesn't normally come down and just like select a house roof and like target that roof and obliterate it and everything else is fine. And this is something that, adjusting for years, I'd come up and, I'd pull up and the contractor comes out. I'm like, hey, how's it going? What damage have you seen? Is there anything other than the roof? And you wouldn't believe how many times they're just like, no, it's just the roof. No, I didn't see anything else. I already know. I mean, they're lucky that I'm an independent, because I'm going to go look for that damage and try to find damage to the downspouts and the window screens, because I want to actually approve the roof if I can. So, but if I can't find any other damage before I get on the roof, 99 out of 100 times I already know whether or not I'm going to approve the roof. If there's nothing to the downspouts, there's no window screens, the mailbox, even splatter on the siding, even if the siding's not cracked, there's normally what they call splatter marks on the siding. So if you're not seeing anything, you can't really make a case that hail came down, because there's just no signs of it. So that's kind of, and I know the roofers look at it from a different lens, because they look at it from, we make our money replacing the roof. They don't care about a window screen. They don't care about the mailbox. They don't care about one downspout that got damaged. They don't care about that stuff. They want the roof. So you have to kind of change your perspective a little bit and look at it from, yes, you want the roof, and how do you get the roof? You have to find the damage to everything else.
Yeah. That's such a sharp point. And it just, it makes so much sense when you say it, right? It's like one of those points where when somebody like illuminates it for you, go, well, yeah, like, obviously. But as you said, from experience, so many roofers are not doing that. So many roof sales guys are not thinking about the story that needs to be told, and how that story is ultimately told through the estimate. I mean, that is the storytelling channel. So kind of diving over into the estimate side of things, what do you feel like, you mentioned a little bit about, and obviously you have a ton of expertise on the method of adjusting / estimating and supplementing. So what are some of the most common things that you feel like contractors or roofers miss when it comes to supplementing and estimating? What are some of the most common things that are missed, but are like crippling and negatively? Positively, they would bring more profits. They would help to get probably the acclaim, make it a better story. What are some of those things?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. The first thing that jumps into mind is that every contractor you talk to says they're going to say they want overhead and profit. They want overhead and profit on the job. So they say this, but one of the things what the insurance company is going to say is, if you're just replacing a roof, that's not complex. You don't need a general contractor to do that. So even if you are a general contractor, what their standpoint is, this is not a complex job and it doesn't require coordination. So they'll go back and forth with a couple different reasonings to push back on that. But every contractor wants overhead and profit. And the easiest way to get it from the insurance company is to show them that multiple things are going on. So in a way, it kind of goes back to the original point, is find other damage. Don't just do the roof. Find the downspouts, find the window screens, find the mailbox. So that's the easiest way to get it. You can argue it all day long other ways, and sometimes you'll get it. But the easiest way to get it, the shortest time and shortest effort, is by finding other damage. So that's an easy one. And it adds so much. It adds, depending on where you are, 20 to 25% to the claim if you can just get that. So it's huge. Other ones, it's just kind of smaller but very detailed items. Like they're not, it's interesting. An adjuster comes out to do an inspection and he has this tool belt on him. And in the tool belt, he has things like a shingle gauge, tape measure, metal gauge, caliper. He has all these measuring devices and a camera to take all these measurements and figure out what's going on and photo document it. And most contractors, you'll see, not carrying anything. They don't have a tool belt on. They have their iPhone and there's, snap. They'll like stand back and snap something. It's like you're not really documenting anything useful to anybody. One thing I say is stop at the eave and get all those pictures there. Lift up the shingles. How many layers of shingles? If there's 2 layers of shingles, you can charge extra to remove that second layer before you put a new roof back on. Is it gutter apron or drip edge? Like it's a minor difference, but it could be $300, $400, $500 on a roof. So for an individual sales guy, that's a good chunk of money for like a photo that takes a second to take. I mean, it takes a second, and that could be $500 for your company. Right. So there's all these small steps that even with companies that I know are, pretty tuned in to the insurance game, like they know, they know a lot about insurance at this point. They've been doing it for a while. There's still a disconnect because they'll constantly bring in new sales reps, and the sales reps have very little experience. And oftentimes they do a couple ride-alongs and they cut them loose because they're independent contractors. They're going to get a commission if they get money, if they get jobs. So, they kind of just send them in there. But how much is being left on the table because of all these small little things that add up? So,
right. What do you feel like on just general averages here, but what do you feel like on a per claim, and maybe just by way of story, right? It's hard to give averages. It depends on market. It depends on population size, competition. It depends. I mean, right. All these different factors, of course, play into it. But in a sense, generally speaking, by way of maybe stories you can share, examples you can share, what's like a couple of good stories about how somebody could have gotten X, but through supplementing and estimating, you help them get 10% more or 20% more. And how did you get more for them? Are any of those kinds of stories come to mind?
Yeah, definitely. And the short answer to like how much is being left off, well, not necessarily how much, but I can say up front, almost every single job has stuff left off. Virtually, like I would say 99%, like almost every single job has stuff left off. So how much, 20%, 30%, just kind of depends. Some of the more interesting ones, we've had some where, a contractor will order a supplement for us and, they're just looking because it's kind of the general handful of items that are pretty much always left off of the initial estimate. And that's kind of what they're looking for. And we'll go through the photos and sometimes we'll find, something they didn't even know about. And sometimes that actually can take the top off a claim. So for instance, we did this one where there was, I'm trying to remember this crazy roof. There was a layer of 3-tab shingles. And underneath that, there was, there was sheathing. But the interesting thing was underneath that sheathing, they'd actually put purlins on top of a metal roof. So you had this huge stacked up thing of like 8 inches of roofing and all this framing they had just slapped down there on top of a metal roof. At the end of the day, we got the insurance company to approve ripping all of that off, all the way down to the rafters, redecking that roof, and then putting a whole new roof on. The claim more than doubled in size. So, those will come along here and there. And sometimes I will just, if you don't have a good review process, if you don't have experts looking at this and looking at everything and they can recognize, hey, something's odd about what's going on here, and they can look into it, that'll just get missed. And you just left 20, 30 grand on the table. Will that come along all the time? No, but it will come along here and there.
Right. That's a great story and a great insight. Also, just going back really quickly, you said that oftentimes roughly it could be even 20 to 30%. Just make sure that everybody, who's listening to this podcast understands that. I mean, what you're saying is basically on a $10,000 roof, maybe $2,000 to $3,000 worth of additional damage is being missed, correct?
I would say that's more common than not, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. What would you say, you mentioned some of them already, but if you had to almost like rattle off a quick list of most common things missed, what would you put as maybe like the top 5 to 10 that are most commonly just overlooked and they're just not caught?
Well, there's kind of a little bit of a difference between overlooked and things that are like almost always left off. So there are some code items that if they're not on the roof, the adjuster is just not going to write for them up front. And that's going to take some documentation. Hey, this is code here. And then they can maybe include it. So things like that is ice and water shield, drip edge, some of the flashing, like those things are usually, if they're not on the roof, the insurance company won't include them up front, and it'll take a supplement to get those items included. Other items that just kind of get missed that wouldn't even take any pushback, the insurance company, if they knew about them, would approve them right away, would be things like, steep and high charges getting left off a roof, just miscounting of what's on the roof, like, there's 4 pipe jacks instead of 3, just little things like that. So it all adds up, a pipe jack, bam, you're at, it's $85 just added to the claim. So not much, but what if there's a couple other things like that on the job? So there's, we see this all the time. And I've seen this from the adjusting standpoint. Back when I was adjusting, I would go out and do a reinspection, and there were things I could just include just because they were missed. It's not even a point of contention. It just wasn't documented and no one knew about it. So you see that all the time though.
Right. That's crazy. What would you say in terms of the kind of benefit maybe of outsourcing some of this, or just finding somebody who knows how to do this process? Like, can you kind of speak to the experience of how can roofing companies who understand insurance or maybe are just starting to get into it, how can they begin to create a process and systematize supplementing and producing better estimates in the first place?
Yeah, so one thing that we tell the contractors we're working with is that, number one, it starts with the inspection. We've kind of hit on a lot of that stuff. But whoever's doing your estimating, whether you're going to use ClaimStar, whether you're going to do it yourself, whether each sales guy is going to do it himself, he needs the right information to go off of to build that estimate. So it all starts with the inspection. From there, some of the benefits to consolidating your estimating process would be kind of a uniformity of your presentation to the homeowner and the insurance company as a company. You don't necessarily want every estimate from every different sales guy, looking different. And this sales rep is always asking for overhead and profit, and this guy never does. So kind of hinders your case to the insurance company that you're a consistent professional company. And these are the things we always do on every job. One of the benefits to outsourcing it would be, the quality review that you're going to get with us from ClaimStar here. So what we'll do is look at, we look through all the photos. We'll actually pull up satellite imagery. Sometimes you can pull up Zillow, and we'll find stuff that wasn't even in the photos the contractors are sending us that we can find and actually add to them. And that just comes with, years of experience. My team has, many years now, decades actually of experience in this industry that can that can find those items. And then one of the biggest ones is really just freeing up your company to focus solely on sales. So especially in the busy season, you have a big storm and you're in crunch time and you want to go out and get every single job. Does it really make sense having a couple guys in the office do all your supplementing when they could be out there knocking doors and getting jobs? So
right. And that's true of almost every industry, right? Especially when it comes to a sales team. They always talk about how like you don't want your sales guys to be administrators. In other words,
right.
spending hours and hours and huge percentages of their time doing paperwork and documenting, because that's just hours and hours being taken away from what they should be doing best, which is selling.
Exactly.
And so that ability, I mean, number one, like, first of all, you save time and you get that back. But two, they're probably missing stuff left and right, it means they're losing profits on every single job. Maybe the insurance company, in some ways, I mean, there's like an element almost that you spoke about in terms of the consistency with which an estimate is delivered every single time. There's almost like a branding that happens there to an insurance company, right? So I think for roofers, they constantly think of, and roofing owners in particular, are thinking of branding as it relates to the customer and the homeowner. Absolutely, that's important. But there is really an extremely important amount of branding that needs to happen with insurance companies to build a good reputation that, hey, every estimate we produce is honest and accurate and detailed, and here's the evidence for it. We're not just making up a story, we're detailing and documenting the story for you to see. And if that doesn't happen every single time, you can see how insurance companies would begin to label that roofer, that roofing company, as they're just going to put forth a rotten estimate, or it's just going to be constantly missing stuff, and that can really devalue. And what have you seen in that regard? Have you heard stories or horror stories, or seen how negative estimates can really cripple a roofing company's brand for the insurance company?
Oh, definitely. And I've seen this firsthand personally from the adjusting side. You become familiar with a lot of companies. If you're in one area, you're running into the same guys constantly.
Right.
And you start to identify, this company is, they're just going to send these inflated, sloppy estimates where none of it's really correlating to facts. This is just something they do. They're just going to throw this together, and they're going to throw a bunch of labor hours in there and throw a porta potty in there. It's like all this stuff that's like, there's nothing I can do about that. And what ends up happening, because we're all human, is that once you start identifying, okay, this company is constantly sending me, BS estimates, you're going to start spending less time looking at those, and you're just going to you can dismiss those quicker, because you can just say, okay, I don't really have to address this very much. And then there are other companies that, they're honest and they're spot on. They go for everything they can absolutely go for, but they're not just going to make stuff up and inflate their estimates. And those you pay more attention to, you're willing to work with them. You'll call the contractor and say, hey, what's going on with this? What did I miss? Can you send me the actual code that you're referring to here? You'll work with those contractors to make it happen. So there's no question, adjusters are going to treat you differently by what you're presenting to them and how you treat them in the field.
Right. On that point too, I'm interested to hear, again, the unique perspective that you bring in having done independent insurance adjusting. How many, let me ask this in two ways. First of all, what were some of the most frustrating and annoying things as an insurance adjuster that roofers did? In other words, for roofers listening to this, like, what are the no-nos to avoid so that you don't, like, even before you've opened your mouth, maybe, pee off the insurance adjuster on the other side?
Yeah. There would probably only be a handful of things. I'm a pretty easygoing guy, get along pretty well. There were a few things that would really irk me the wrong way. And that would be any kind of aggressive nature, and most people are smart and they just don't do this. So this is a pretty rare event, but you'd be surprised. It does happen. You'll pull up. I remember sometimes a couple guys in particular, you pull up and they're already shouting. We haven't even gotten started, and they're already shouting and cursing. And, that's just an obvious no there. But other ones, one thing that's a little annoying is if you, when the adjuster pulls up and everything's already marked. So contractors and adjusters will use chalk to mark up the roof and mark things. If that's already done and I disagree with what you marked, well, now in all my photos, I'm going to see all your chalk. And so now to write up my report to send to the insurance company, I got a label. I have to have this long label, like I did not mark that photo, like, or that square, contractor did this. So I would just say, just ask, just call them. I started getting used to certain contractors. They would call me and say, hey, do you want me to get started and mark stuff? And since I knew them and I knew the kind of stuff they marked, I would say, yeah, go ahead. That made my job easier. I would just say, ask. Don't just assume that you can mark up the entire roof before it gets there. Yeah, I don't know. I guess, something like that. There wasn't too many things. Obviously, it annoys every adjuster when they think you're manufacturing damage. So, if you're tearing shingles and making damage yourself, that's just, no one likes that. So
Right.
those would be the big ones, I think.
Right. That's a great insight. And from the other perspective, like from the positive side of things, what do you feel like if you had to give one or up to like maybe three pieces of advice for roofers, sales guys who are meeting with an insurance adjuster? I mean, you kind of just gave them the big no-nos, but even beyond that, what are some of the what are the extra steps, the extra mile that they can go to really build a good rapport? Like, what are the top three pieces of advice you could give? Hey, roofers, sales guys, do this, and likely you will build a great relationship with your insurance adjusters in your area.
Yeah. This is kind of just a universal thing. Just make their job easy and they're going to like you. And this is especially true with independent adjusters. With independent adjusters, okay, so they're getting paid a commission based on the size of the job. So they want to approve the job, and they also want to do it quickly, because then they can get to the next one and they can do that one quickly and they can get home earlier and write them up. So it's all about time for them. So they want to go quickly and they want to approve the job. So if you think about it, the interests of the independent adjuster and the contractor are perfectly aligned. So there's no need for any kind of contention. But the biggest thing is just make their job easy. Give them a call. Like, I love it when a contractor would call me back when I was adjusting and say, hey, do you mind if I set up the ladder and start looking around and get the job? And I'll be like, yeah, of course, set up the ladder. I love that. Then I don't have to get off my ladder. It's one less thing I have to do. I can pull out 5 minutes before the contractor. Perfect. I can be out of there. So, if you just make this job easy, have the ladder set up, be ready to go. Don't pull up 20 minutes late and then ask for a full new inspection. Like, that was just, that would happen. I would do a whole inspection and then the contractor pulls up as I'm getting off the roof and then he wants to show me stuff on the roof. It's like, no, you lost your chance. I'm already done. That's my time. That's my money. So,
right. So
it's a little different for a staff and for an independent, but I'd say a lot of the same principles apply. Just, make his job easier. Always ask to do anything on the roof. Like, if you're going to mark something or use his ladder, definitely ask. Some adjusters are going to just be like, liability, you can never touch my ladder. I generally don't care. If they ask me, I'll let them. But yeah, it's kind of the opposite of the no-nos.
Yeah. Those are, just sharp insights. And it's just great to hear how you can build that rapport. And again, it's almost like, a mini branding. So we talked about the company by delivering really detailed, accurate estimates, well-documented estimates. They're in a sense building a brand with the insurance company, but in a micro way, every single sales rep can be helping, again, to increase the authority and the brand and the reputation of the company as a whole in the eyes of insurance adjusters, whether they be staffed or independent, and just as a company in general, just on like every single level, from homeowner to adjuster to insurance company and everybody in between. Obviously, the better your reputation is as a company, probably in most cases, the more favorable like the outcomes are going to be for you. So curious about this. Let's kind of switch gears from it. You've given a ton of advice and insights into how to write and obviously produce better estimates, how to have candor and rapport and build that, and how to, the no-nos and the positives as well with an insurance adjuster. I'm just curious, what do you think is, looking ahead a little bit, what's the future of estimating and supplementing and where the whole insurance thing is going? Like, in other words, do you feel like insurance companies will continue to demand that estimates get better and better and more detailed and more documented than ever before? In other words, is this like a thing that's phasing out in estimating and supplementing, or do you feel like it's only just getting started in importance?
Well, it's not going away. I don't think, that's for sure. I think there'll be a back and forth and it'll change, but the principle of documenting and showing them that this is why they owe for certain things, I don't see changing. Or, do they adapt? For sure. Once you start doing something and it's effective and they're seeing more money go out, they're going to also adapt and try to combat that. So it's a tug of war in some regards. But I think the principle will stay the same. And as long as you can adapt and you can keep showing them, there's a new code in this area, there's a new law that we have to follow here, and this is something that will go as local as county by county or state or region. So I don't really see the tug of war stopping. I definitely see more and more contractors that are using a third-party estimating service or centralizing their estimating in some form. So I think that's going to be happening more for companies that are serious in the insurance restoration. So yeah, that's what I would say. I would say it's not, I don't see that really going away. They'll fight it. Like sometimes they'll, the insurance company will want to send out like what they call a ladder assist, a Hancock guy instead of like an adjuster. But they get pushback on that. Are they going to be able to fully implement that? I don't know. I don't think so. But I don't know. But yeah, I mean, it's always changing. They're trying to use drones now, but homeowners don't like that. They want a real adjuster to come out and shake their hand. So
Right.
Is that going to be successful? I don't think so. So we'll see.
Right. What do you think in 5-10 years? What's your sort of prediction on the insurance realm? I mean, right, you're looking into the crystal ball. Where do you feel like insurance will be for roofing companies? Will it be similar to where it is now? Radically harder? Obstacles in different ways? What do you think? What's your vision into the future?
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I could say is I don't really see the trends changing, which is more and more centralized. Like when I was a staff adjuster, I worked in this hub of I don't know how many people were in this building, and we handled. It was in Pennsylvania. We handled the claims from the inside for all of the Northeast. So actually, and that went from like Pennsylvania to Maryland, and then like everything northeast of that. So it was a huge region, all being handled by one little building. Well, it was a big building, but one building in Pennsylvania with, I don't know, 1,500 staff adjusters in there. And we were only seeing more and more of that. And that was actually a really small staff adjusting hub. The bigger ones are out west in Dallas and Texas and other places. So that'll probably continue because it makes sense, and it's more profitable to centralize and to allocate to specialize certain parts of a job to something. So I don't really see that going away. What it'll be like in 10 years is anyone's guess, but I don't really see that trend reversing.
Right. So who knows what it'll be in 10 years, and better take the opportunity while it exists right now.
That's correct.
Well, awesome. You've shared a ton of, again, good insights into basically number one. I'll kind of highlight three things. The first one is for roofers, sales guys, in particular, sales consultants. You talked a ton about this idea that most roof sales consultants don't understand the story that an insurance adjuster needs to tell the insurance company. The second thing that you kind of pointed out is basically the different ideas about methodologies for estimating and supplementing. In other words, sort of what are the most common things that are missed? What are the things that roofers, sales guys need to look for in terms of damage to help tell that story? And three, I think you talked a lot about also the rapport and the candor that sales guys and roofing companies in general can build with, especially I feel like independent insurance adjusters, but even staff insurance adjusters as well. So thanks for all the detailed insights on that front. If anybody has questions about all of this, about estimating, about supplementing, seeking advice, seeking tips, et cetera, or seeking to look to learn how to work with your company, where should they go to find that or to get in touch with you?
Yeah, they can. They can find our website at www.claimstarestimates.com. That was built by Enable and Jeremy's company. So he took us from receiving orders out of email and got us completely over to the website with the whole back end that processes our orders and does a whole bunch for us. So thank you, Jeremy, for that.
Welcome.
ClaimStarEstimates.com is the website. There's a contact form at the bottom of that. They can shoot me an email at pgaetano@claimstarestimates.com, or they can just give me a call, leave me a message if I don't pick up. My phone number is 540-683-6841. So
Awesome.
Any of those ways, I'll get back to you.
Awesome. Awesome. Thanks so much for everything today, Peter. And thanks for being on the show.
Thank you, Jeremy.